Hey everybody, Alex from SCADA Forge here. In this video, we're going to talk about tabs in perspective. Similar to the vision video on tab strips in vision, we're going to look at tab containers, which are similar to the container example that we saw on the vision side. And we're also going to look at navigation using the navigation component in perspective. Since it's a little bit simpler than vision, to start with the container, because navigation is a little more complex in perspective, we're going to start with that. First, we'll create a new view, call it tab containers, hit create. We'll go to our perspective components, and we're going to go to the container section of the pane. And we have a classic and modern that just affects the style of the tab look. I'll just use a classic for this example. We'll drag that into our root container, and we'll see that it gets populated here. Now, to add a component to this, we need to deep select it. In this case, our root container is deep selected with this crosshair icon. We can either double click on the tab container, or we can right click and click deep select. And you'll see that that changes to drag a component into the container. You'll also see it gives us a plus button up here, and this is while we're in design mode. That's if we want to add tabs to the mix. We'll see here we have a list of tabs under our property tree for the tab component. We can either click to add a value to that, or we can use the plus button here to add a tab into here. And then we'll see with this, whatever we have here is the text that is on the tab itself. So we can change this to tab 1, tab 2, and tab 3. And then you'll see our current tab at index property is which tab is selected, similar to the selected tab in vision. And if we want to change, say we wanted to do a modern look here, that'll just change the look and feel of the tab itself. We can also change tab sizes, give it some additional color properties, and show what the tab should look like if it's active and inactive or disabled. Then we also see, now that we're deep selected, we can drag a component into the container here. So let's just throw in a label. We will drag and drop. And we'll give that a center aligned text using the style editor. Now, the one thing to keep in mind with the tab container is you can only add one component to each tab. So in this case, we're just going to show a label to demonstrate functionality. If we wanted to show something more complex, like a piece of equipment or a data structure or something that has more than one component in it, and we'll get into this talking about templates and things in future videos, we would search for a view, and we would create a view that has everything we want to display in the tab, and use an embedded view component to drag into the tab here. So with that, we can then select our second tab. We can drag a label into there. We'll give that a center aligned text style here. And then we'll select tab 3 and give that a center aligned text style as well. Text align, center. Now you'll see that adds these labels to the tab container here as just objects below that. If we want to select that label, we can update to say tab 1, or if we want to go and select the tab and then select the label, we can say tab 2, and here we'll call this one tab 3. Now, if we go into play mode And we'll select our tab container. We see we currently have tab 3 selected, and our current tab index is 2 because it goes 0, 1, 2. And if we select tab 2, our current tab index goes to 1 and displays our tab 2 label. And tab 1, current tab index 0, shows us our tab 1 label. So this allows you to build tabs in perspective views and utilize, in this case, if we wanted to say show 3 different pumps or conveyor systems or something, we would look at our current tab index, use an embedded view, and pass in parameters based on our current tab index value. But for now, we'll just leave it there because that demonstrates the functionality of the tab container in perspective. Now we'll dive into navigation. So in this case, I created window 1 and 2. These are just windows with a label centered on them to demonstrate functionality. We will create a new view. We'll call this navigation. And I guess if you wanted to, you could replicate the navigation functionality with the tab container using some scripting. Since Vision only gives you one component for tab strips, it's a little easier to do because they have the navigation built in. But here we can come down to the navigation section of the component palette, and we can get a horizontal menu that matches the tab strip we just looked at. We can use hyperlinks or a menu tree, which is effectively the vertical tab strip that we saw in the Vision section. So for here, we'll just drag over a horizontal menu, and we'll put this up at the top of the window, and we'll just make it wider. And this is what it comes pre-selected with, and we'll just make this window shorter to not take up a lot of real estate. There we go. So if we look at the horizontal menu properties, we see the different items here. These map to what are effectively the different tabs here. We can see that they're enabled. They give us a target. 2 is disabled, and 3 is the last one. In this case, the target is looking at google.com. So if we were to click this, it will take our browser to that address. And that one also has an icon path with a link icon here, which we see up there. On the menu item tab, we don't have an icon path, but we do have a label of menu item. So for the time being, since we have window 1 and 2, let's just delete items 2 and 3 from the list. And we'll make this window 1, and we'll make this window 2. Okay, now we'll get rid of the icon because we'll just make sure they look the same. We can just delete the path, and the icon goes away. Where this gets a little more complicated, we can't simply select the view we want to look at in perspective. So we have to set up some perspective URLs. To do that, we select perspective in the project browser. And this allows us to set up our client view here. So you'll notice on top, we have the add button on the top, left, bottom, and right. That allows us to do a docked view in perspective. If we want to have different menus for different views, we can select those as they populate here in the list, or we can go to shared settings, and these are global for all of our views that we're looking at. You'll also see here in the middle we have corner priority. It's currently selected as top bottom. That means that top and bottom take up the full width of the client. If we change that to left, right, the left and right columns take up the full height and the top and bottom are contained within that. We'll select top and bottom since we have a top and bottom view, and we'll click Add, and that will allow us to select what we want to populate in our docked view up here at the top. So now we have our navigation view from our tabs folder there. So anytime we open up a client, we're going to see the navigation view populated up at the top. Now we're going to add paths to window 1 and window 2. So we click plus here on the left. That adds a new item to our list. The slash is basically your default view that will populate in the middle pane here when you open the client. And then when we add more, these will allow us to populate the URL. So we will call this window 1, and we'll select our primary view of window 1 under tabs, and we'll give it a page title. This will show in your tab in your browser. We'll give that window 1. And if we want to, for some reason, change the corner priority settings here, we can either do inherited, which will pull from shared settings, which is default, or we can change it to left, right, or top, bottom here. So now we will have a window 1 view that we can access, and we will also add the same for window 2. Select our primary view, tabs, window 2, window 2. Okay, so now we have these URL settings that we can go to in a browser, and now we can go back to our horizontal menu. We can go to items, and we can change our target to match what we put there. So window 1 for the first tab, and window 2 for the second. So now if we hit save, we can go Tools, Launch Perspective, Launch Session. That will open up a browser. This gives us the default, effectively, we'll go back to the designer here, the default view, which in this case shows our display components view that we configured in an earlier video. And we see that here in the center pane. We don't have any left or right content. We only have the horizontal menu up here in the top. Okay, so now if we click window 1, that will populate to our window 1 URL. We see that the /window 1 got added to our URL up here in the browser. And if we click window 2, it navigates to window 2 by updating the URL here in the browser. So that shows you how to set up navigation within Perspective. Pretty straightforward. If you want to get a little more complex with your navigation, we could also, let's imagine that we have, say, an overview screen, and we want that to just be our default URL. And let's say that we want to be able to have our windows populate here with a drop-down menu like you might see on some websites. We can get rid of the target here, and we can add an items property. This is a default property on this component, but we click add items, and we can add an array element, and this gives us effectively a sub tab below that. So we can set this up the same way as we had our tab in the previous example, and call this window 1, and then we'll add a second one. We will call that to our target of window 2 and our label of window 2. Now if we save and go back to our browser, if we click this, it will now give us a drop-down menu with everything we have configured under items. So now if we click here, and go to window 1. That loads window 1. Click window 2. That loads window 2. And then overview takes us back to our base screen of just the /URL. If we wanted to have this on the left, we would use the menu tree component and dock the window or dock the view to the left here under our shared settings. And that would give us an item here on the left. And that's pretty straightforward. And again, you can do navigation without this component using scripting or event actions. There's a navigation option under that you can use to basically accomplish the same functionality here. But that covers everything you need to know about tab strips and navigation in perspective. Thank you for watching.